Before we begin, lean close. What you are about to hear is not a story that was invented. Stories like these are not invented. They are remembered. They are the kind of thing grandmothers press into the ears of children at night, not to frighten them, but to prepare them. Because the world has always been full of men who outran every enemy except the one they carried inside themselves. This is the story of Kofi Asante-Boateng, and it begins, as all truly terrible stories begin, with a celebration. The town of Kumasi, great golden city of the Asante, was dressed in its finest cloth. It was the season of Adwira, the festival of purification, when ancestors are called home, and the living clean their souls like pots before a feast. The streets were thick with people, women in wax-print cloth of deep indigo and flame orange, children on their backs. Men wore kente draped over one shoulder, crocodile-tooled sandals, carved walking sticks, the proud movement of people who know they are watched and do not mind. Kofi Asante-Boateng moved through the crowd the way a large fish moves through shallow water. You felt him before you saw him. He was not the tallest man at the festival, but he carried himself as though the sky had made special arrangements for him. His kente was the pattern called Sika Futuro, gold dust, navy blue threaded through with bands of gold and deep green. His grandmother had commissioned it from the finest weaver in Ashanti the night he was born, sitting beside the weaver all through the darkness, directing every stripe, whispering words no one else could hear. She had died 3 years ago, but people still remembered what she said when the cloth was finished, just as dawn broke and the roosters began their argument with the dark. She pressed the folded cloth to her chest and said, quietly, as though she were not sure she wanted to be heard, "This child will be rich in everything except time." Nobody understood it then. Nobody remembered it until it was too late. He arrived at midday. No one saw him come through the town gates. No one remembered passing him on the road. He was simply there, standing at the edge of the great Adwira courtyard, that open square ringed by clay-walled compound houses with carved wooden doorposts and roofs of layered thatch, where the Fontamfram drums stood taller than a man, and the ceremonial stools of the ancestors were displayed on their leopard skin coverings. He was old, so old it was difficult to say whether age was still happening to him or had already finished and left. He wore white cloth from neck to ankle, the white that in Akan tradition belongs only to the dead or those who speak on their behalf. Around his wrists, 7 strings of black and white beads that rattled like the teeth of dead men when he moved. His eyes were white, not blind in the ordinary sense. These eyes were white from edge to edge, as if someone had replaced them with polished river stones. They did not move. They did not blink. And yet the man moved through that packed courtyard with absolute precision, stepping around children without being told, angling his carved walking staff, topped with the golden head of a Sankofa bird, between bodies with the confidence of a man who sees better than anyone present. Akamfo Antwi, the blind diviner of Akyem, so old that the elders of Kumasi said he had been old when their own grandfathers were young. The crowd parted for him, the way water parts for hot iron. He moved through the gathered people. He paused at the chief's linguist. He passed. He paused at the paramount chief's eldest son. He passed. He moved among priests, elders, warriors. He passed them all. And then he stopped. He stopped directly in front of Kofi Asante-Boateng. The old man raised one hand slowly, without drama, and placed his palm flat against Kofi's chest, flat against the gold threads of the Sika Futuro Kente, directly above his heart. He was still. Kofi did not move. He was not a man who frightened easily, but something in that moment, the cold of the old man's hand through the cloth, the way his own heartbeat seemed suddenly too loud, the total silence of 500 people who had stopped breathing, kept him exactly where he was. Akamfo Antwi's white eyes rolled upward. He stood that way for what felt like a very long time. Then he said, in a voice like dry harmattan leaves skipping across red earth, quiet enough that only the nearest 10 people heard, loud enough that every one of those 10 would remember every word for the rest of their lives. Someone will die in the season of the dry wind. He removed his hand from Kofi's chest. He turned. He walked away. And later, when people went looking for him, no one in Kumasi could say where he had gone, which road he had taken, or whether he had eaten or slept or even sat down. He was simply gone. And in that great courtyard, 500 people stood very still and looked at Kofi Asante-Boateng. Kofi laughed. He laughed the laugh of a man who has been handed something too heavy and is pretending it weighs nothing. He called for palm wine. He said loudly, performing confidence for 500 witnesses, that old diviners mistake men all the time, that Akan was confused, that did anyone notice how fine the drumming had been this morning? People laughed with him, because when a man of Kofi's presence chooses to laugh, it is social suicide not to laugh along. But the laughter did not reach his eyes. That night, Kofi sat alone in his inner courtyard, that beautiful red-walled space painted in ochre and deep red, the carved doorposts bearing the Adinkra symbols of his clan, the string of bells his grandmother had hung above his sleeping platform to announce to the ancestors whenever he woke and slept. He sat with a clay pot of palm wine and counted. The season of the dry wind was the period when the harmattan blew down from the Sahara, drying everything, bleaching the sky the color of old bone, filling the nostrils with fine red dust that tasted of the desert. The season when old men's joints ached and children's lips cracked and rivers ran low and the earth seemed to hold its breath. It began in approximately 3 months. He poured palm wine into the red earth at his feet, the first pour, for the ancestors, and called their names one by one, the whole long chain of the dead, asking each one in turn to stand between him and what was coming. The earth drank the wine, the night was quiet, the bells above his bed were still. And Kofi Asante-Boateng, who had never been afraid of anything he could see or fight or outmaneuver, sat in his beautiful compound and understood, for the first time in his life, what it meant to be afraid of something with no face. He moved quickly. That was Kofi's nature. His first move was Mam Ama Kanadu, the herbalist who lived at the eastern edge of Kumasi. Past the blacksmith sheds where iron rang against iron from morning to dusk. Her compound was dense with dried roots and animal bones and calabashes sealed with beeswax. Strings of cowrie shells hung from every doorpost. Her apprentice, a girl with shaved head and the serious eyes of someone who had seen enough not to be surprised, led Kofi inside without asking his name, as if she had been expecting him. Mam Ama listened with her eyes closed. When he finished, she said, without opening them, Akan does not make mistakes about seasons. He has been known to mistake a face, but never seasons. Seasons are written in the body of the world itself. He only reads what is already there. Kofi asked, "Can it be changed?" She opened her eyes, the eyes of a woman who had been asked this question before by every version of him who had ever walked through her door, and she said, "I can give you protection. I can thicken the wall between you and what is coming. But the wall has a door, Kofi. The wall always has a door. My work is not to remove the door. Nobody's work is." She gave him a leather amulet stuffed with herbs and tied it to his left wrist with a cord of 7 braided threads. She told him, "Wash it in river water before each new moon. Pour libation every morning before the first rooster crows. Call his ancestors by name." He thanked her. He walked out into the Kumasi morning feeling something close to hope. He should not have. Next, he brought his fear to the eldest men of his clan, gray-haired uncles who sat on low stools and said little. His great uncle, Apanian Agie, so old his skin had begun to return to the earth while he still sat upon it, listened to the full story. Then he said, choosing each word the way you choose a stone to cross a river, testing each one before putting your weight on it, a prophecy spoken is a road already built. You may walk a different path. But understand this, Roads have a quality that paths do not. Roads find their travelers. That is what makes them roads and not just ground. Kofi thanked him. He heard him. He believed in that moment that he had understood. But walking home in the dark, the red earth cool under his sandals, the night sky above Kumasi thick with stars, the fear came back louder than wisdom. It is always louder than wisdom. Fear speaks first and speaks fast. Wisdom takes its time. By the time he reached his compound gate, his decision was made. He was going to leave Kumasi. Not just leave, he was going far. East, past the Volta River, past every road the prophecy had ever walked, into country where no one had heard of Akan or any blind man's words in any golden courtyard. He would be somewhere so foreign that the prophecy would arrive at his empty house in Kumasi and find nothing but cloth and memory, and a string of bells swinging above a vacant bed. The night before he left, he came to his wife, Akasua, and told her he was going on trade. She looked at him the way she always looked at him, not with suspicion, but with that quiet, comprehensive attention of someone who has been reading the same beloved text for 11 years and knows every page. She said, "Kofi, if the prophecy was a mistake, you will travel and return and we will laugh about it for the rest of our lives. But if it was not a mistake, where you run to is where it was already waiting. The road does not chase you, husband. You walk to it. You are walking to it right now." He kissed her forehead. He told her she worried too much. He walked out through the compound gate. He did not look back at his house. Later, he would wish he had. He was going to outrun the season. He was going to run so far, so fast, so completely that fate itself would lose the trail. He was 32 years old. He was strong and quick and clever. He had never lost a contest he had entered with his full intention. He did not yet understand that this contest had been entered on his behalf long before he was born, and that its terms contained no provision for withdrawal. If this story has gripped you, and something tells us it has, then do not go anywhere, because what Kofi discovers on the road east is far worse than anything he left behind. The warnings will multiply. The signs will become impossible to ignore, and a child at a river crossing will say something that will stop your heart. Episode 2 drops very soon, and trust us, you do not want to miss what happens next. If you are watching on YouTube, please like this video right now. It tells us you want more stories like this, and it helps bring Kofi's journey to more ears that need to hear it. Drop a comment and tell us, did Kofi make the right choice by running? And if you have not already, subscribe to this channel and ring the notification bell, so you are the first to know the moment episode 2 arrives. We make these stories for you. Help us keep making them.